Hello and welcome to Soul Basics Soul Chat. Today we are talking with Jennifer Slebioda. Jennifer is a poet and an amateur photographer. And after many years of doing both, she decided to put her two passions together and become a photo poet, which is a genre all on its own. Photography and poetry are avenues in which Jen finds beauty and comfort from a lifetime of loss. Welcome, Jennifer. Thank you for being with us today. If you're comfortable, can you share with us some of your experiences surrounding loss?
Sure. Thank you for having me on your Soul Chat. Really, really appreciate it. Uh, the loss didn't start immediately in my lifetime. First, I got to, you know, discover the camera and poetry and all that. The loss came after. Um, so, got married. Long story short, after a few years, he was in a car accident, actually in a motorcycle accident, and ended up with a brain injury. And sadly, after the brain injury, things were not easy for him. And one of the things that happened, was that he he asked for some prescription drugs, and it was not a good mix. He mixed it with alcohol, which is contraindicated always with that kind of prescription, and literally lost his mind. And I ended up losing him as a result of that. He took his own life. And it was really difficult for me. And there's a lot of things that, were part of this tragedy were things after the fact, like, pardon me, having to hire a cleaning service, because it's not the kind of thing. And and I personally, I couldn't go in and see. I just could not subject myself to that kind of thing. So that was something that happened actually back in 1999, in August, and and that was something that I was not prepared for. Um, we'd been married about 7 years, and there'd been some issues. It wasn't a perfect marriage, but it was passionate. And honestly, he was from Germany, and he had these big blue eyes and this awesome accent, and looked a lot like Mikhail Baryshnikov, if anybody knows who he is. But the thing that was difficult was because he took his own life. I had to take some therapy. And it's anybody who has lost anyone to suicide knows that, especially if it's your spouse and somebody that you live with and you're close to on a daily basis, that it's a lot different than if it's an acquaintance or a friend, than if it's a spouse. When it's a spouse, it's a completely different scenario about how it makes you feel inside. And I don't know if there's any art lovers out there, but there was this piece of art. I think it's a Dali, where there's like this beautiful chest of a swan, but it's all blown out. And it's pretty much how I felt after the loss of my husband in 1999. Another thing that they don't talk about with suicide, is that the spouse who survives, ends up facing the door themselves. So there was a period of time where I was contemplating the very same, through a different path, but and what's interesting and kind of illuminating is that what pulled me out of it was photography, and what pulled me out of it was seeing a picture of myself, and that sort of put a whole different perspective on everything after that. But the entire loss, the shock, the trauma, the sudden tragicness of it, uh, picking up the pieces after the fact, literally, um, you know, um, people around you, they don't know what to say. They don't know how to even begin to know the right words, because there are no right words. Uh, there is only the situation, right? And then, of course, another thing a lot of people don't talk about when you're a spouse and you've been widowed is suddenly you're vulnerable to all kinds of, I'm, unspeakable people who think that this is an opportunity, which sadly, you in the middle of your loss and your pain and your shock and your trauma, you have to put up boundaries and walls and all kinds of different things, right? And then there's that little thing, well, just carry on, and that kind of thing. So the amount of pain that opens up is, first of all, never ending. Um, and years from the event, I am still on occasion have to deal with things, right? Which you think you've got it all wrapped up, it's all locked up, it's been years and years, and it's gone. But no, it's not. The memory resides with you your entire life.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, when you lose somebody suddenly that's your spouse, you keep thinking you see them everywhere that you've been before. So there's this huge urge to relocate, to go somewhere where you never went anywhere with that person, because then you don't have the memory.
Yeah.
There's so many things that are tied up in that. So that kind of loss is completely different than any other kind of loss. And what we're talking about is the loss of a spouse to suicide. And
Thank
no
you, Jenn.
matter who you talk to or anyone,
Yeah.
it never, the only thing that changes is how you grow with it. We're about to be visited, just giving you fair warning, there may be a black cat involved.
Oh, Jenn,
I
thank you
think
for sharing that.
he just likes to see it.
Oh,
Yeah,
he's
so
there to
so
comfort you.
yeah. So, but that sadly, with everybody's and experience with COVID and whatnot, a lot of things have changed, and a lot of people have suffered losses of various kinds related to that. So I just want to mention one other thing here. Within about 2 years of that loss, I also lost my mother to age and complications of kidney failure. So it was like within 2 years, it was just kind of, I don't know, I felt like, it's enough.
Yeah.
uh, and part of this though is really important, because I think, you know, somebody who has never experienced loss can never ever know the feeling. And I think that it changes you forever.
Yeah. Jenn, thank you so much for that vulnerability. And to share with, what was his name? What was his first name?
Gunter.
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 Gunter. I'm sorry for your loss of Gunter. Um, it's very tragic, and I, I mean, I've suffered loss as well, and some family members to suicide and some to accidents, but I've never lost a husband to suicide, and I can't even imagine how that must feel. And you said that you um, got some therapy through that, but it was a photograph that actually was a turning point for you. What was that photograph of? You said it was of yourself, but what specifically made you, what was your life at the time when you took that photograph of yourself?
Oh, I remember distinctly standing on a balcony. I took a journey out of town.
Yeah.
I highly recommend that as a good thing to do. But I was standing on a balcony in a hotel, and I was contemplating stepping off, um, and taking that door. Uh, and somebody had said, I would really like to take some pictures of you. And would you be open to that? And, I'm like, whatever, yeah, sure. But the second they showed me the pictures, I saw myself. And that was the key, to saying, I am here. I am here. I'm alive. And that is such a gift, you know.
Oh,
Don't deny that. Don't take that away. Don't, and surprise, surprise, years later, after all of this tragic trauma, as it were, uh, I had an opportunity to go back to school, and I did. I took the opportunity, and I went back full time for 2 years as a mature student. And honestly, it changed my life, and I'm sorry, being a mature student is awesome. I I mean, you look around and your experience and your understanding is degrees above
right.
awareness above. I mean, when you're 18 or 20 or 25, I'm sorry, you're still a baby. But going back to school, as a mature student,
Hmm.
changed my career path. Um, and ultimately it gave me financial independence, which as a woman and now as a single parent is critical. And
Yeah,
and the most important thing about this whole uh, process was that it enabled me to pursue my passion,
yeah.
and I, after years of carrying around the tiny, tiny little box camera with the little power shot zoom lens
Hmm.
and taking kid pictures at the, Callaway Park kind of thing, I said, you know what? I really need a DSLR, and get me a real digital camera and get into some real photography and get back to writing,
Yeah,
which I have to admit I've never ever stopped journaling. I've been journaling since 1984. So I guess, if I were really impressed, I could do a memoir or something like that. But I feel more of my heart is in poetry.
right.
And a lot of what got me through this was my connections with people and with writing, and
Yeah,
also with um, the literary community that we have in Calgary, which is actually like huge.
it
Like,
is.
I don't know if anybody's heard of When Words Collide, or, there used to be a science fiction and fantasy convention called Conversion. This was prior to When Words Collide. We're talking like the 90s and stuff like that. And I'm like, there's a science fiction and fantasy convention? What? You know? So that was kind of a path for me. And even I didn't actually plan on becoming a mom or anything, but like I wasn't going to take life away once it was provided to me, and I carried on and actually ended up with two children, and now have two teens, one who is almost 16 and one who is almost 18. No, won't be a teen anymore come September.
Hmm.
So life changes you a lot, and the greatest gift really out of everything with the losses that I've suffered has been the fragility and the preciousness of life. To me is a reminder every day
Yeah.
that life is a gift, and you really have to push that envelope to the absolute maximum. And like my plan is eventually to put together a book of poetry and photography.
Hmm.
Uh, and thanks to people in the community, we now have video poetry. I'm not sure if you're aware, but that's now a thing. Uh, Apparently, the National Canada Arts Society, or whatever the official title is, I can't recall exactly, but
Hmm.
they are accepting video poetry as a new thing. So it's media has really changed the face of poetry. But if you look back historically, you will see that poetry and music and uh, songs and all of this are connected with poetry,
Hmm.
and it's almost undeniable.
That's so beautiful. And I love what you said about the fragility of life, and to be able to share that through your photos and through your poems. Like, I've read some of your poems and I've seen some of your photos, and I think you do that. Like, you share your soul, your heart and soul with, through that medium, for so many to see, and that's so beautiful. Thank you for being a photo poet, and I would love to be able to see you get into video poetry too. That would be so cool. So, as you have been over the years, delving more and more into poetry and photography, you have taken on an entirely new persona. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So when you say my name, Slebioda, it's a lot of people have difficulty when they see it and pronouncing it. And to be honest, there's like a million Jennifers. So I thought, and one of the biggest problems that any author or poet or writer faces is differentiating yourself from another name. So I thought instead of, you know, continuing only with Jennifer Slebioda, which, is great, but I thought, really, this is about Magixa and magic and, sort of an invocation of magic. I look for magic in small things and in flowers and in trees and, you know, mountains and the sky. And a lot of my poetry reflects that. Some of my poems have actually come right out of a picture. I look at a picture, I take this
Mhm.
picture of rock and water, and I'm looking at it, and suddenly I see there's this face coming out like a wolf. And, so I wrote the poem Ancient Faces to go with the
Mm.
picture. And so there's magic all around us everywhere in very small things quite often, or in things that we see every day that we just don't really think about too much, like trees. What a wonder, like I have a lot of trees where I live. Actually, probably over 13 trees, and I've got two maples in the backyard. I've got three pine trees or whatever, and each of them are more than 50 feet tall, and they're huge, but they're nature, they're natural. And I grew up in northern Saskatchewan, which, if anybody knows northern Saskatchewan, there's not much of anything except trees
Mhm.
and lakes and
Mhm.
some swamps and that kind of thing. And oh, lots of bugs. But
Lots of
it's a
mosquitoes.
thing that, oh, yeah, yeah. And they're like B-52s.
Yes.
But the thing about trees for me, I mean, look at a tree. Like it just stands there,
Yeah.
and it grows towards the sun, and it drips in the rain, and it soaks up the rain and the earth, and it keeps its roots deep in the earth. And these are lessons that really, if you were to think of yourself as a tree, you want to stay grounded, and
Mm.
and it's little things. Like I was looking up the other day how to cleanse myself. And surprisingly enough, we're right into music and bells. And I don't know if you knew this, but ringing a bell, if you want to cleanse your energy, ringing a bell will do it. And I'm like,
Mm.
how is it that I never knew this? Like tiny little things, oh, wind chimes are
I love,
magical.
yes,
And
they most
they
definitely are.
apparently they're very cleansing, and so I've been trying to learn how to cleanse my energy, because one of the other things that happens if you're, I don't know, empathic or artistic or sensitive or whatever word you want to use for it, one of the things that happens is that you end up getting a residue of toxicity from other people.
Yes.
And sad but true, you have to learn how to cleanse yourself.
Mhm.
And then what are the tools for that? And so Magixa has been, well, kind of like an adventure, because, I get up, I get going, and I'm like, what am I going to do today that's magical? Is it going to be
Mhm.
discovery? Am I going to take my camera and go for a big walk somewhere and see what I can find? And sometimes I'm not even doing anything really important, and I'll just use my iPhone and take a picture because I'm just there and it's just that moment. But
Mhm.
sometimes it's people who are magical, and
Yeah.
other times it's places that are magical. But inside of each of us, there is a magic seed. And some people call it prayer, some people call it belief, and some people call it music.
Yeah.
But there's magic almost everywhere. And some of it is human, uh like in the music, like that's a human thing. Music is a human thing. But birdsong is magical to me.
Mhm.
Okay, yes, even the meow is magical. Uh, this communications that we have with one another, and I don't know what everybody's beliefs are, because everybody's going to have a different belief about everything. You can have 100, you know, types of one religion, and everyone's going to have a different take on it
Mhm.
personally, right? But for me, the sound of the wind in the trees, uh, you know, uh, just just the sound of rain, or even water flowing, different things can bring peace. And all of these things, all of these bits of nature are magical.
Yeah.
And I don't think we recognize that much. And so Majiksa is a part of my sort of making a focal point, in drawing in the magic, and capturing the magic and sharing the magic. And that's the whole point, is that we are surrounded by magic, and we just have to look for it. And it's almost like putting on a pair of rose-colored glasses and saying the world is magical.
Yeah. You know, I just hearing you talk, I am so like I feel the magic enveloped in me, like just surrounding me and going through me just as you speak. And it takes me back to that moment when you were photographed on that balcony. And I am so grateful that you didn't go through that door, that you stayed grounded and you found your magic. And you were able to do that through your photography and through your poetry and through the trees. And um, when you think of a tree, to be a tree, you have to be rooted and grounded in order to be able to soar up to the clouds so that you have that strength. And I think you're showing us that through Majiksa. And what a wonderful alter ego to have as Majiksa. And you spell it with two X's, right? So Magixxa. I love that spelling. It's pretty cool. Yeah, so thank you so much for being Majiksa and introducing magic to all of us. So I have a feeling I already know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What makes your soul soar?
Well, photography, yes, and
Yeah,
poetry, yes, and music, definitely. um and combining them. I'm looking at some new forms, and as I said, I'm a person who likes to do research.
yeah,
I don't want to ignore history, because history is illuminating the future for us. Uh, and there are so many things that historically have been together. Like, I mean, if you look at bards, they they wrote the words to the songs. They presented the words with
mhm,
music, and that is really poetry and songwriting are long, long history of being intertwined.
right,
And then now with video, that's a whole new concept. But it's really not that new. It's just, new to us, because
right.
we're of the era that we're in now. And of course, with the pandemic, and now being endemic, uh, everybody's discovering Zoom and video, and vlogging is a thing, and these are all gifts to us, for as long as we've known them, but really they've been with us for centuries. So the whole idea of mixing up words and poetry and music and visual art and presentation and even stage performance, spoken word is a thing. Um, it's like it's just begging to be filled, right? And
Yeah.
as a result, there's been almost a renaissance burst of poems or video poetry. The spoken word artist is a huge thing. I'm a person who volunteers currently with When Words Collide,
Hmm.
which is in its actual final year after 12 years of you know Aurora Awards success,
Hmm.
uh, as being an excellently well-run volunteer convention or literary festival in Calgary.
Hmm.
Uh, so one of the things that's so important is community and putting together people who have like minds, much like what you've done with your soul basics,
Oh,
in the
thank you.
sense that you're creating a community. And thank you. I'm so thankful that you've done this,
Oh,
because
my
I think
pleasure.
it's a huge opportunity for everyone to really connect. And we're all about connections. Humans are all about connections, and that's a huge part of growing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for spreading your magic. And I just, your magic is going to help so many people that have suffered loss. Your example of finding yourself, being aware of how important and how fragile and how beautiful life is, and that life is to live. Um, you're you're helping so many people, and yeah, I'm so pleased that you were able to join me today and just talk about the things that you've been through, and yeah, just keep spreading the magic. Thank you so much, Jen. It's been such a pleasure.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, you know, on your program. And if anybody's curious, I do have a website. It's Magixsa Musings, Magixxa Musings. And yeah, come take a look. And also, you know, stay connected,
Yeah,
and keep reaching for the magic no matter what, because
yeah,
it's there.
absolutely. And I will post your website on my website when I put this video up. Thank you so much, Jen. We will
Thanks again,
hopefully
Tammy.
we'll have you back again soon, because I think that you will help so many people. Thank you.